Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Blacklisted MX. We got another special guest, team rider Felix Lopez out of Parkzilla PRMX race team. How you doing today, Felix?
Doing good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Nice, not a problem, man. It's a pleasure having you, dude. I'm excited about having you on the show, man, as well. So let's talk, man. You're out of Mexico. What part of Mexico are you from?
I'm from Veracruz, Mexico,
Oh,
down south.
okay. How old were you, and how'd you get into motocross in Mexico?
So I got into motocross whenever I was 4 years old. That's when my first race was, and
Mm-hmm.
so my dad used to race like street bikes, just
Okay.
out on the street, like pretty dangerous stuff.
Okay.
Just for fun. He
Mm-hmm.
he always loved bikes, and since they didn't have any class for kids or anything, he got me a little PW50, and
Okay.
that's how I started racing. Yeah.
Really? So you started at an early age at PW50. Was it competitive in Mexico when you were coming up through the amateur racing? Because you don't
Um,
hear too much from Mexico, like unless you're probably in Mexico, but the outside sources, like you don't hear too much about Mexican motocross, and that's why I have you on here because it's an honor to have you on the show. But I like to be educated on some of the Mexico supercross and motocross and how everything works back there. So as an amateur, my question was for you: as an amateur, how was it racing in Mexico, racing the amateur stuff? Is it big there? Is it little? I mean, how did you progress in Mexico?
yeah. So actually, there's not much motocross, especially down south where I'm from.
Hmm.
There's not really like I'm still to this day like surprised how my dad got me into motocross, being from where I'm from.
Yeah.
Because motocross in Mexico is more up north, like closer to
Mm.
the border, like to US and stuff. They're like way
Okay.
more. They know more about it, and like the tracks, everything is more like central Mexico and north.
Hmm.
So where I'm from, I mean, we had races, but not really that big. Like really, just kind of friendly. Just let's get together and race, kind of,
Okay.
But I always really loved it. Like ever since I started riding, I really like liked it, And my dad saw that, so he will always try to like, let's say if I was in a beginner 65 class, he always tried to put me with the bigger kids, or
Okay.
try to like challenge me more always. So like it's crazy. Like whenever I was 13, 12,
Hmm.
13 years old, around there,
Hmm.
I started riding at 250,
Oh,
and my dad
really?
would put me in the big class. Yeah, so I had like more like
Hmm.
competition, and like he always wanted me like to get that challenge. So he will take me like as a kid. We will go to watch Supercross sometimes in
Hmm.
the U.S.
Okay.
So that then in 2007 we went to Houston Supercross, and we saw James Stewart. He won that night,
Hmm.
and so it really that time it really like got to me. Like I
Okay.
really wanted to keep racing and
Hmm.
get better and better, because that time I had a 65 Kawasaki,
Hmm.
and I had the number 7. So and then I went there and I saw this
Yeah.
guy, like that really blew my mind. Like it really, it
Hmm.
stayed with me.
Okay.
So that's how then we like in where I'm from, the it started really getting like dangerous, with the cartel and stuff like that. It was
Hmm.
really getting too bad, and
Wow.
my dad made the decision to move us out of there, and we went to McAllen, Texas. That's
Oh,
like right on the border
wow. Uh huh.
with the U.S. and Mexico,
Yep.
and with the idea of me, still riding, and do it. Like he always thought like he was gonna spend the same money, but I will go to good tracks, and like it was gonna be better.
Hmm.
Because he in Mexico, like the even in the nationals at that time, it was not really that good. Like the organization and the tracks, they had really a mindset of supercross kinda,
Hmm.
because Pedro Gonzalez,
Hmm.
he was a really good supercross rider, and like he rode, he's the best we have had in Mexico.
Hmm.
So they wanted to have supercross, like I guess because of him, or I don't really know why, but uh, so these tracks were really dangerous. Like you had people making tracks that they didn't really know what they were doing, so
Mm.
everybody was getting hurt. So it
Okay.
was like it was pretty bad, and so there was not really organized and
Hmm.
look out for the kids coming up or anything like that. So
Wow.
that's why my dad was like, no, this is like, even for motocross, it's not good for you. Like, this is not ideal.
Hmm.
So that was the other thing, like why we like moved out of where I'm from, like from Veracruz. So
Hmm.
I started riding just on the weekends. I never really trained. I just, rode always on the weekends. And
Hmm.
during the week, I will just like, my dad always had us, go to taekwondo or do anything
Hmm.
physical, always
Hmm.
had us doing stuff like that, me and my brother. And then we went to there in McAllen, Texas, and I would just race the local races on the
Hmm.
weekends and stuff. And that's how it like started, evolving of me uh, coming back and forth to the U.S. and Mexico, and that's how I started,
So,
getting more into it.
so most of your I would say your prominent amateur stuff was based out of the states, or was that more based out of Mexico?
Whenever I turned 15,
Hmm.
I my dad we went to MTF in Georgia
Yep.
for a camp
Okay.
to train there, and that's when I like everything changed. Like that's
Hmm.
when I learned about Loretta's, and like that's really when we got kind of like educated about amateur stuff, in the
Okay.
U.S.
Yep.
and everything. So that really opened our eyes up, to really know what was going on, because we really did not know anything about it, like
Yeah.
nothing. We came from like not knowing. I didn't know about Loretta till that time. So that's when we met Colleen Millsaps and all of them
Hmm.
there, and they were really, really helpful. And so that's when my dad decided, like, I really owe it to my dad, because he always, taught, he always looked ahead and like,
Hmm.
taught about the possibility of me, doing better, and like,
Yeah.
maybe that he saw something, and that's how he left. So I ended up staying as a member at MTF.
Oh wow. And did you
Yeah,
go there? Did you go there like frequently, like over the years to progress, or did you just go there that one time to kind of fill things out,
no.
train and progress, or was it like a whole program that you put yourself through to develop everything?
So I went there for a month,
Mm-hmm.
and they said I could stay as a member. So I ended up, we went back to McAllen to get stuff. We had like a little camper,
Mm-hmm.
and I went back and I stayed there as a member, like for like full time member. So
Okay.
that was the first time I really started like actually training. I
Wow.
didn't know anything about it till then. So it really was a huge, turnaround for me, and I
Mm-hmm.
started really getting a lot better. Like that year, I really got improvement. Like that was my biggest improvement,
Mm-hmm.
and so I ended up going to Loretta's that year in Schoolboy One class,
Okay.
and it was really for me that time, like just to go. And my dad told me, like, even if you don't make it, like we're still gonna go and watch, like.
Mm-hmm.
So I made it. I had my ticket, and that was like really. I was so happy, and so I got like 20 something, overall.
That's
And
good.
the very next year, I got sixth overall in Schoolboy One. So it was a really, yeah. So it was a really improvement, big
Oh yeah,
improvement
that
for
was a
me.
major gain for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you went through all these ranks and you finally turned pro, did you got your pro license in the states? I take it then.
Yes, in 2018. So after the Loretta's and the MTF thing, like I actually went back to Mexico. I
Hmm.
was in Mexico because I got hurt and stuff. So I was getting myself back together, and finally I came back, and I started training with the Masterpool family.
Okay.
And that was in 2017.
Hmm.
Um, and they, like, Jerry really, like, got me, using my mind, technique and different stuff, working on different stuff. And I went to Loretta's in 2017 in the A class, and then the very next year, 2018, that's whenever I got my license and went pro in
And
the U.S. Nationals.
you did you when you turned pro and you raced the U.S. Nationals, because I know you're past Mexican champion as well. I think you were a Mexican champion in 2018, and I think it was 2020.
Yeah.
So
So
did you
that same
ride?
year,
Go ahead.
yeah. So that same year, In 2017, I raced a few Mexican nationals because
Hmm.
of I was getting support from Kawasaki in Mexico,
Okay.
so I was back and forth. That's whenever I started doing the back and forth racing.
Okay.
I got signed with KTM Mexico for 2018 for the championship in Mexico.
Hmm.
So that's how like I raced the whole Mexican championship in 2018. And during that time, I went to Glen Helen tour to do the a few outdoor nationals. So
Oh,
I did
okay.
Glen Helen and like I did Muddy Creek and a few others.
Wow.
So I was I was crowned champion in Mexico, and then
Hmm.
that year was crazy because we even went to the Motocross of Nations with KTM.
Oh, you went with KTM
So
for Team Mexico, right?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So that year was pretty big. Like it was a pretty fun year
Hmm.
having the support from KTM and everyone. So it was for me it was like a turning point. Like it was really good for me. To keep
Okay.
building and keeping myself on a bike and getting better and stuff.
Now we all have all these crazy turning points in life, and I always talk about life and challenges. Everybody, like I ask a lot of people the same questions on this podcast because everybody is pro, right? That a lot of guys that I deal with that are pro and that are in the motocross have the same past and passion as turning pro. But the pros and everybody else, it's like their journeys getting to the point where you are now. Those are the stories that I like to hear. And your story is different than, like I said, everybody's story is different, but your story is a little bit different because you don't see too many guys like the last guy, well-known guy I've heard of out of Mexico, like you said, was Rodriguez.
That's right.
But I'm
Yeah.
sure there was other fast guys during that time. They just didn't get any type of recognition. Now, with you going back to Mexico in 2018, is the recognition for Mexican riders still the same there this year as it was in 2018? Is the sport growing any bigger? I mean, why was it? Did you really leave Mexico? I mean, because you had a career in Mexico with the KTM team, but you're still over, in Canada now, but you're spent a lot of time in the U.S. Um, was it not worth it staying in Mexico, racing those seasons, Caesars, excuse me, those series and those races as a pro for those teams, or it's just not worth it staying in Mexico? There's no money to be made there. Like, what is the sport deeply? I mean, does it not have the
Uh,
backing because there is teams there?
there is teams. Yeah. Actually, so whenever we like my dad moved us out of there, I didn't want to race, or we didn't want to race in Mexico because everything was that, like
Hmm.
I told you. And so this Aguilar is his name. He started actually changing the races in Mexico and the series. Like he started
Okay.
really, making the tracks like motocross style, no
Okay.
doubles, no crazy jumps,
Hmm.
and he started changing it. And so he started promoting the whole national
Oh,
with
okay.
the local government and stuff like that. So it
Okay.
started really. That's when the teams really started,
Hmm.
coming back, and
Hmm.
that's how he was running the factory Suzuki team, which was backed by Pro Circuit,
Oh, wow.
and
See.
that's when KTM came up, and that's when really that was actually around 2015, 2016. It started, getting better and better.
Hmm.
And by 2018, that's when they had Franklin Nogueras from Dominican Republic signed for Suzuki, and then they signed me for KTM,
Hmm.
and we had a few other teams like I guess privateer teams,
Yep.
and so it started really getting better. For Mexico, it was pretty good. It was that championship started really getting well known, even like in South America and stuff with
Hmm.
other countries. So 2018, 2019, it was good. 2020, it started really good. Like it was the best we've seen in Mexico, I think, ever. Like how
Hmm.
it's like our other teams came up. We had a guy from Brazil racing the
Wow. Okay.
450. A guy,
Okay.
Justin Hoff from US.
Yep. Yep.
We had a few others, foreign riders, good riders.
Hmm.
So it really started good.